The chauffeur slowed the car as Michael leaned closer to the window. The girl's clothes clung to her skin, her hair plastered against her cheeks. The water swirled around her knees, carrying leaves, wrappers, and broken branches. Yet, she didn't flinch. Not once. "Sir, we should keep moving." "The water's rising," the driver said, his voice uneasy. "Stop the car," Michael ordered, his tone firm but calm. The limousine came to a halt, the engine humming softly against the heavy rain. He opened the door before his security detail could stop him, stepping into the cold water. The shock of it pierced through his shoes instantly. As he approached her, the smell of wet earth and diesel filled the air. "Hey!" he called out, trying to raise his voice over the pounding rain. "It's dangerous here." She didn't respond. Her small frame trembled, but her gaze never wavered. Michael stepped closer until he was just a few feet away. "You need to move to higher ground," he said again, softer this time. Finally, she turned her head. Her eyes, large, brown, and filled with something far older than her years, met his. "I can't leave," she said, barely audible through the downpour. "Why not?" Michael asked, his brows knitting. Her lips quivered. "They'll float away." He followed her gaze downward. 2 plastic bags tied together drifted beside her legs, weighed down by something heavy inside. "What's in those bags?" She hesitated, clutching them with both hands. "It's all we have left." Michael glanced around, no adults in sight, no one claiming her. Only the sound of thunder and the distant cry of a baby echoing through the flooded street. His instinct, sharpened by years of business deals and guarded emotions, told him to walk away. But something about the way she clung to those bags made his chest tighten. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she whispered. "Lily," he repeated, his voice softening. "Where are your parents?" She looked away, biting her lower lip, as if the question hurt more than the cold water around her. "Mom's at the hospital. Dad went to get help. They said they'd come back." Michael's heart sank. Judging by the storm's fury, it didn't seem likely anyone could come back soon. "You've been standing here waiting for them?" She nodded, her chin trembling. "If I leave, they won't know where to find me." He sighed. The rain was relentless, slapping his face as if urging him to act. "Come on," he said, extending his hand. "You can wait in the car. It's warm." But she shook her head stubbornly. "No. I promised Mom I'd stay here. I don't break promises." Her words hit him harder than he expected. In a world where people broke promises for money, power, or convenience, this little girl clung to hers like it was sacred. He looked back at his car. The chauffeur was gesturing anxiously for him to return, but Michael stayed put. He removed his coat and wrapped it around Lily's shoulders. "At least take this," he said. "You're freezing." Her small hands touched the fabric as if it was something rare. "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice faint. For a moment, they stood there in silence, an unlikely pair bound by a strange, fleeting connection. The flood carried fragments of paper, lost shoes, a stuffed toy. The world seemed washed of everything unnecessary, leaving only this raw moment of humanity. Michael found himself asking questions he hadn't asked in years. Why was he here? Why did he care? Maybe it was because, in her, he saw something he had lost long ago: innocence, loyalty, or perhaps the ability to believe that promises still meant something. "Lily," he said finally, "I'll stay with you until your parents come back. Deal?" She looked up at him, eyes glistening with tears and rain. "Promise." He smiled faintly. "Promise." As they stood together under the grey sky, lightning cracked in the distance, illuminating the water around them like molten glass. Somewhere inside his chest, a long-locked door creaked open. He didn't know it yet, but this small girl, standing in a flood, would soon change his life in ways that billions never could. Minutes blurred into an hour. The rain softened to a steady drizzle, but the water around their legs kept rising. Michael's phone buzzed non-stop in his pocket, messages from his assistant, missed calls from board members, but for the first time in his life, he ignored them all. "Lily," he said gently, "we can't stay here much longer. The water's getting higher." She stared at the bags in her arms, her knuckles white. If we go, I'll lose everything. What's inside? He asked again, crouching to her level. She hesitated, then whispered, Mom's clothes. Her scarf. My brother's shoes. And this. She carefully pulled out a small framed photo sealed in plastic. It was faded, edges curled, but he could make out 3 smiling faces, Lily, her mother, and a little boy about 4 years old. Michael swallowed hard. That's your brother? She nodded. He's sick. Mom's been at the hospital with him for days. Her voice cracked. She told me to stay home, but when the flood came, I didn't know where else to go. Michael glanced around, water up to their waists now. The streets were nearly empty. The children who had been scavenging earlier were long gone. Lily, he said firmly, we need to get to higher ground. I'll keep your things safe, I promise. She hesitated, eyes flickering between his face and the framed photo. You promise? I do, he said, meaning every word. He lifted her gently, her small frame weightless against his chest. She gasped as he stepped through the water, holding her belongings close. The rain began again, heavier now, pounding against the limousine roof as they reached it. The chauffeur opened the door, his face pale with relief. Sir, we can't stay here, he said urgently. The lower bridge just collapsed. Drive to the nearest shelter, Michael instructed, helping Lily into the backseat. He wrapped her in a dry blanket from the seat compartment. We'll be safe there. As the car pulled away, Lily pressed her face to the window, watching the flood swallow her street. She didn't cry, but Michael could see the war in her eyes, fear, loss, confusion. You did the right thing, he said softly. You saved what mattered most. She looked up at him. You think so? He nodded. Sometimes, saving a memory is braver than saving a thing. She smiled faintly, clutching the photo frame to her chest. Mom says that too. The drive to the shelter was slow. Roads were blocked, lights out, and the rain showed no mercy. When they finally reached the temporary relief center, an old high school gym filled with mats, lanterns, and the smell of wet clothes, Lily's eyes widened. Volunteers moved between rows of people, handing out soup and blankets. Children cried softly while mothers tried to calm them. Michael felt the sting of reality. This was the world beyond his gated estates and skyscrapers. He guided Lily to a corner mat. Sit here, I'll get us something warm. She nodded obediently, hugging the photo like a treasure. At the donation table, a volunteer recognized him. You're Mr. Grant, aren't you? The billionaire. He nodded modestly, not in the mood for attention. Just here to help. The man smiled nervously. We could use all the help we can get, sir. Michael handed over his wallet without hesitation. Take care of everyone here first, he said. We'll be fine. When he returned, Lily was sharing her blanket with another little girl. He couldn't help but smile. Even with nothing, she was giving. He handed her a cup of soup. Eat slowly, he said, sitting beside her. She nodded. Thank you, mister. Michael, he said. Just Michael. They ate quietly, the hum of voices around them like distant waves. After a while, she looked up. Why did you stop for me? The question caught him off guard. Because, you reminded me of someone, he admitted. Your daughter. He shook his head slowly. Someone I once knew. Someone who also believed promises shouldn't be broken. Lily tilted her head. Did you keep your promise? He stared into his cup, watching the steam curl upward. No, he said finally. I didn't. The air between them grew heavy, filled with the weight of unspoken stories. Michael hadn't talked about his past in years, not since the accident that took his wife and daughter. He had buried his grief under work, numbers, and silence. But something about this small girl, standing in a flood, holding onto her world, cracked that silence open. Night had settled over the shelter, wrapping everything in a soft, uneasy quiet. Rain drummed on the roof, but its rhythm had softened, like a heartbeat calming after panic. The air smelled of wet wood and instant soup. Rows of people slept under thin blankets, some whispering prayers, others too exhausted to speak. Michael sat awake beside Lily's mat, his coat draped over her like a shield. Her breathing was steady, her small hand clutching the framed photo even in sleep. Watching her, he felt something stir inside him, a familiar ache he hadn't dared to revisit in years. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a small picture. His late wife, Grace, smiling beside their daughter, Ava. Ava had been around Lily's age when he swallowed the memory. The accident still haunted him. He had promised Ava he'd be there for her birthday. But that meeting, the one that couldn't wait, had stolen his last chance. Now, watching Lily sleep in a flood shelter, he wondered if the universe was giving him another chance to keep a promise he'd once broken. He brushed the thought away, standing to stretch when a volunteer approached. "Sir," the young man said softly, "the water's receding. We'll start taking people to their neighborhoods tomorrow." Michael nodded. "Thank you. By the way," the volunteer added hesitantly, "some of the hospitals nearby are still flooded. We're getting reports of families separated from their kids. Maybe she's one of them." Michael's heart clenched. "Yeah," he said quietly, glancing at Lily. "She's waiting for her parents." The volunteer nodded. "We'll check the lists in the morning." When dawn arrived, sunlight streamed through the cracked windows, golden and weak but full of promise. Lily stirred, rubbing her eyes. "Is it morning already?" He smiled. "It is." She yawned, sitting up. "Do you think my mom's okay?" "I'm sure she's trying to find you," he said, though uncertainty pressed at his chest. "We'll go look together." They left the shelter after breakfast, walking through muddy streets lined with debris. The air was thick with the smell of soaked walls and gasoline. Volunteers in orange jackets directed survivors to aid centers. As they walked, Michael noticed how Lily's eyes darted around, scanning faces in every crowd. "Mom always wears a red scarf," she said, gripping his hand tightly. "If I see it, I'll know it's her." He squeezed her hand. "We'll find her, Lily." They reached a relief tent outside the local hospital. Inside, nurses and volunteers moved swiftly, checking names on lists, guiding families to cots. Michael approached the front desk. "Excuse me," he said to the nurse. "We're looking for Lily's mother. Possibly admitted here during the flood." The nurse typed quickly, frowning. "What's the name?" "Emily Parker," Lily replied, her voice trembling. The nurse scanned the list, then paused. "We have an Emily Parker in Ward B admitted last night. Condition stable." Lily's face lit up. "Can I see her?" The nurse nodded. "Follow me." As they walked through the corridor, Michael's chest tightened. The beeping of monitors, the smell of disinfectant, the quiet shuffle of nurses, it all brought back memories he'd fought to forget. Grace's hospital room had felt just like this, sterile and too quiet. Lily ran ahead, turning a corner where a nurse opened a curtain. "Mom!" she cried. A woman on the bed turned weakly, her face pale but smiling through tears. "Lily," her voice cracked as the girl rushed into her arms. The embrace was desperate, trembling, and pure. Michael stood at the doorway, frozen, watching the reunion. The way Emily stroked her daughter's hair, whispering reassurances through sobs, hit him like a wave. He looked away, swallowing the lump in his throat. After a few moments, Emily noticed him and managed a faint smile. "Who brought her here?" He nodded. "She's brave. Stronger than most." Emily's eyes shimmered. "Thank you, sir. I don't know how to repay." "Please," he interrupted softly. "No need. Just take care of her." He turned to leave, but Lily's small voice stopped him. "You're going already?" He forced a smile. "You're safe now. That's all that matters." She ran over and hugged him tightly, surprising him. "You promised to stay until they came back," she whispered. "Don't break it." His heart twisted. She remembered. He knelt to her level, looking into her tear-streaked face. "You're right," he said quietly. "A promise is a promise." He stayed. Hours passed as the storm outside finally faded to silence. Emily drifted in and out of sleep, exhausted but recovering. Lily dozed beside her mother's bed, holding her hand. Michael sat near the window, lost in thought, his reflection merging with the fading light. In that fragile calm, something shifted within him, The wall he'd built over years of guilt began to crumble. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't too late to make things right, not with Ava, but with himself. Later that evening, the hospital lights dimmed to a mellow amber glow. Outside, the sky cleared, revealing a bruised sunset that painted the flooded streets in hues of gold and sorrow. The chaos had quieted, leaving behind the soft hum of recovery, nurses checking 4 lines, volunteers whispering updates, children finally sleeping without fear. Michael sat beside Lily's mother, Emily, offering her a cup of warm tea. Her hands trembled as she took it. "Thank you," she said, her voice still weak. "I heard from one of the nurses that you stayed all night." He nodded lightly. "Didn't want Lily to wake up alone." Emily's eyes softened. "You didn't have to, Mr. Grant," he said quietly. "Michael Grant." Her eyes widened slightly, recognition flashing. "The Michael Grant? The businessman? You're on television sometimes, charity galas, foundations." He raised a hand modestly. "That's not important right now." She smiled faintly. "It's just odd to see someone like you here, helping strangers in the flood." He looked at the floor, tracing a drop of water as it slid from his sleeve. "Maybe I'm the one who needed saving," he said under his breath. Emily tilted her head, sensing something deeper beneath his calm tone, but she didn't press. "Either way," she said softly, "thank you. You brought my daughter back to me. I can't imagine." He interrupted gently. "She's remarkable. Brave, loyal, you've raised her well." Emily smiled weakly. "She's her father's daughter." Michael looked up. "Where is he?" Her eyes clouded. "He went back to our house before the flood got worse. He wanted to grab some of my medicine and a few things for Lily. He hasn't returned yet." The air seemed to still around them. "I'm sorry," Michael murmured. Emily nodded slowly, gripping the blanket tighter. "I'm trying to believe he's safe. Lily still thinks he's coming home." They sat in silence for a while, the beeping of monitors filling the space between unspoken fears. Then Lily stirred, waking up with sleepy eyes. "Mom," she whispered, "you're awake." Emily smiled and brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. "Yes, sweetheart. Thanks to this kind man." Lily turned to Michael. "You kept your promise," she said, smiling shyly. He nodded, managing a faint grin. "Couldn't break it, could I?" She beamed and hugged her mother tightly. Watching them, Michael felt something bloom inside him, not joy exactly, but a quiet warmth he hadn't felt since Ava was alive. The room, for the first time in years, didn't feel empty. He stood after a moment. "I'll get you both something to eat." Lily tugged at his sleeve. "You'll come back, right?" He paused at the door. "I will." In the cafeteria, he found a tray of sandwiches and fruit left out for patients. As he waited for the elevator, his phone buzzed, an unknown number. He hesitated before answering. "Mr. Grant." The voice was faint, crackling through static. "This is Officer Reyes from the Flood Response Unit. We found your car registration in the relief center, just wanted to confirm you're safe." "I'm fine," he replied. "Thank you." "Glad to hear it, sir." Also, the officer hesitated. "We found an ID on one of the bodies near Oak Ridge Street. A man named Daniel Parker. We believe he was trying to reach the hospital." Michael froze. The name hit him like ice down his spine. "Daniel Parker?" "Yes, sir. The address matches one of the flood zones nearby." He closed his eyes, pressing his hand against the wall for balance. "Thank you, officer." His voice was barely a whisper as he hung up. When he returned to the room, Lily was feeding her mother tiny bites of bread, giggling softly. The sight tore at him. How could he tell them? How could he shatter that fragile joy? He set the food tray down, forcing a smile. "I brought dinner." Emily looked up. "You okay? You look pale." "I'm fine," he lied. But his eyes betrayed him. Emily's gaze sharpened. "What happened?" He hesitated, torn between truth and mercy. "Nothing," he said softly. "Let's just eat." Yet even as he spoke, his throat tightened with guilt. Later, when Lily had fallen asleep again, Emily met his eyes. "You know something," she said quietly. He looked away. "Not here. Not tonight." "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Tell me." He drew a deep breath, his voice breaking. "They found someone near Oakridge." Her face went still. "No." "I'm so sorry," he said, barely audible. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't scream. She just closed them, pressing her trembling hands to her lips. "He promised he'd come back," she whispered. "He promised." Michael felt his heart fracture at those words, the same ones Ava had said before she was gone. He sank into the chair beside her, helpless. "Sometimes, they keep their promises in ways we can't see." She nodded through her tears, clutching her daughter's hand. "If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't." The night grew still again, heavy with the sound of rain tapping against glass. The storm outside had softened, but inside, another kind of storm was taking shape, quiet, unseen, and devastating. Michael sat near the window, watching the faint glow of city lights flicker across the hospital courtyard. Emily hadn't spoken since he told her. She sat beside Lily's bed, stroking her hair gently, her tears long since dried but her eyes empty. He wanted to say something, anything, but words felt too small, too fragile for the kind of pain in that room. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "You didn't have to tell me," she said softly. "But I'm glad you did." He nodded, still looking at the rain. "I thought you deserved the truth." She gave a weak smile. "You did the right thing." He turned toward her. "You were right about her father. He's brave." "I'm sorry." Emily stared at her hands. He was everything good in me," she whispered. "He worked double shifts so Lily could go to school. He wanted her to grow up believing the world still had kind people in it." Michael swallowed hard. "He'd be proud of her." Emily nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "He would. She doesn't know yet. I can't tell her tonight." He looked at Lily, asleep and peaceful, unaware of how much her world had just changed. "She'll need you," he said. "And you'll need her." Emily looked up at him. "You sound like someone who's lost too." Michael met her gaze, his composure cracking for the first time. "I am." She waited. He took a breath, as though pulling a memory from deep within. "I had a daughter once," he said quietly. "Ava. She was 8. Bright, fearless, full of questions. The kind of girl who made you see the world in color again." Emily's eyes softened. "What happened?" "She was in a car accident with her mother," he said, his voice almost breaking. "I was supposed to be there that day. I promised her we'd go to the park after my meeting. I told her, just 1 hour, sweetheart. Then it's all yours." His fingers trembled slightly. "That hour cost me everything." Silence filled the room again, not the empty kind, but the kind that holds two broken souls in quiet understanding. Emily whispered, "You blame yourself." "Every day," he admitted. "I built a life around not feeling it, the money, the empire, the headlines. But it never goes away. You just learn to walk with it." Emily looked at Lily again, brushing her cheek gently. "Maybe that's why you stopped for her." He nodded. "Maybe I saw a second chance. To keep a promise I couldn't before." She reached over and touched his hand lightly, just enough to let him know she understood. "Maybe this was meant to happen. Maybe God sent you down that road for her." Michael didn't reply. He just watched the girl sleeping, the same way he used to watch Ava after nightmares. The same innocence, the same stubborn strength. As dawn approached, Lily stirred awake, blinking sleepily. "Mom," she whispered. Emily smiled, masking her pain. "I'm here, sweetheart." Lily looked at Michael. "You're still here?" He nodded. "Told you I would be." Her small smile was faint but warm. "You always keep your promises, here?" Michael's throat tightened. "I try." She giggled softly, unaware of the storm of emotions her words carried. Later that morning, volunteers came by to distribute supplies. Emily's name was added to the relocation list. They would be moved to temporary housing provided by relief funds. Michael arranged it quietly, making sure everything was handled without her noticing his influence. When the nurse returned with the paperwork, Emily frowned. It says here the expenses are already covered. By who? Michael stood by the window, pretending to check his phone. Maybe the charity foundation did it, he said lightly. She gave him a knowing look. You don't have to hide your kindness, Michael. He turned, meeting her gaze. Sometimes it's easier that way. Lily tugged at her mother's sleeve. Mom, can we go home soon? Emily smiled sadly. We'll have a new home soon, baby. Lily's eyes brightened. Will it be near the river? I like the water. It's loud but pretty. Michael watched her carefully. You like the river even after all this? She nodded. Dad said water washes pain away. Maybe that's why I stood there, waiting. I thought if I waited long enough, the water would stop being sad. The words pierced through him like glass. The reason she stood in the flood, her secret reason, wasn't foolishness or fear. It was love. A child's belief that if she stayed in the place where her father left, he'd come back to her. He couldn't hold back the tears anymore. He turned his face away, pretending to rub his eyes. Emily noticed. You okay? He nodded weakly. Just dust in my eye. But she knew. She looked at him with quiet gratitude. Thank you, for not letting her drown in her waiting. He met her eyes, voice barely steady. No one deserves to drown, not in water, not in memories. 2 weeks passed before the floodwaters fully drained from the city. Streets once drowned were now dusted with silt, and broken branches hung like ghosts from power lines. For most people, it was a time to rebuild what had been lost. But for Michael, it was something else entirely, a reckoning. He visited the temporary housing complex every few days. It was small, crowded, but safe. Each time, Lily greeted him with the same brightness, running up with muddy shoes, arms wide, her laughter cutting through the dull grey of his world. Michael, she'd shout, and every time, he'd feel something shift inside him, something alive. Emily noticed it too. She'd smile softly, watching from the doorway as Lily dragged him around the small neighborhood, showing him her drawings and the tiny garden she had started near the fence. One evening, as the sun bled orange over the rooftops, Michael sat with Emily on the front step of their shelter unit. Lily played nearby, humming to herself as she lined up smooth stones she'd collected from the flooded streets. She's getting better, Emily said quietly. She's strong, he replied. Emily nodded. You know, before the flood, she wanted to be an artist. But after losing Daniel, I wasn't sure she'd ever draw again. She will, Michael said. She's already painting the world back, one color at a time. Emily smiled faintly. You speak like someone who's learned to rebuild, not just survive. He looked out at the skyline. Maybe I am. Or maybe she's teaching me how. A pause lingered between them, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. The kind that means understanding. After a while, Emily turned to him. Why do you keep coming back, Michael? You've done more than enough for us. You've given us food, shelter, safety. He didn't answer right away. The truth sat heavy on his chest, unspoken but clear. Because when I look at her, he said finally, I see what I lost. But I also see what I might still save. Emily's eyes softened. You mean yourself? He met her gaze, a small, pained smile tugging at his lips. Maybe. A light breeze passed through, carrying the faint laughter of children from nearby. For the first time in years, Michael felt like he belonged somewhere that wasn't made of glass and money. Then Lily came running up, holding something behind her back. Close your eyes, she said, grinning. Michael chuckled. What are you up to now? Just do it, she insisted. He obeyed, smiling despite himself. She placed something in his hand, small, smooth, and damp. When he opened his eyes, he saw it was a stone, painted with bright colors, uneven but beautiful. On it, in shaky handwriting, were the words, Promises kept. He blinked, throat tightening. You made this? She nodded proudly. For you. You kept your promise. You didn't leave me in the flood. Mom says when people keep promises, they deserve a forever stone. He ran his thumb over the painted letters, feeling the uneven surface. The last time he'd received something handmade from a child, it was Ava's Father's Day card. He still kept it, tucked in his wallet. "Thank you, Lily," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I'll treasure it." She smiled, skipping off to her mother. Emily looked at him, eyes glistening. "You have no idea what you've given her." He looked down at the stone again. "Maybe she's given me more." Later that night, as the sky darkened, Michael returned to his car. But before he could start the engine, his phone buzzed, a message from his assistant. "Sir, the board meeting is tomorrow. The investors are pressing for your attendance." He stared at the screen for a long time, the glow reflecting in his eyes. Then he typed back a simple reply. "Reschedule. Family matters come first." He leaned back, letting the silence fill the car. For the first time in years, he didn't feel chained to his empire. He felt human. The next morning, he returned to the shelter. Emily greeted him with a surprised smile. "You came early." He held up a bag of breakfast sandwiches. "Couldn't let you two start the day hungry." Lily laughed, hugging his leg. "You're like a superhero, Michael." He chuckled softly. "Not a superhero, Lily. Just someone who's learning to do the right thing." She looked at him, puzzled. "Then you're a real hero." He smiled, brushing her hair back. "Maybe." As they ate together, the sunlight filtered through the curtains, soft and golden. Emily glanced at him, her expression unreadable but warm. For the first time since Daniel's death, her laughter returned, quiet, fragile, but real. Michael realized then that healing didn't arrive in grand gestures. It came in quiet mornings, in shared meals, in little stones painted by small hands. Days turned into weeks, and what began as a random act of compassion slowly grew into something much deeper, a bond that neither time nor circumstance could easily explain. Michael started visiting Lily and Emily more often, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes just stories. He'd sit by the small garden Lily had made, watching her paint old cans and stones into tiny sculptures. The neighborhood kids gathered around her, their laughter echoing across the alley. Emily often stood by the doorway, watching quietly. "She's smiling again," she told him one afternoon. "That's something I didn't think I'd see for a long time." "She's got a gift," he said. "She turns pain into color." Emily smiled. "Like someone else I know." He raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "You," she said simply. He laughed softly. "I'm not sure about that. I've spent too long turning color into gray." She tilted her head. "Maybe it's time to learn again." There was something in her tone, gentle but firm, like the first ray of sun after a long storm. As the weeks went by, Michael found himself bringing sketchbooks, paints, and even small easels for the children. What started as a quiet afternoon hobby grew into a community art corner. He funded it anonymously, but everyone knew the truth. The kids began calling him Mr. M, a name he accepted with an amused grin. One Saturday morning, Lily came running up to him, her hair tied in two messy braids. "Michael, we're painting heroes today. Mom says you have to join." He laughed. "Heroes? That's a big topic." "You're one," she said seriously. "You saved me." Her words caught him off guard. "I didn't save you, Lily. You saved yourself. I just showed up." She frowned. "But showing up matters. Dad said heroes aren't the ones who win fights, they're the ones who don't walk away." The simplicity of her wisdom hit him harder than any speech ever could. He smiled faintly. "Then maybe your dad was the real hero." She nodded solemnly. "He was. But you're part of the story now." That afternoon, as the children painted, Michael sat quietly among them, brush in hand. His canvas stayed blank for a long time, until he dipped the brush in blue and began painting soft waves, a small figure standing in them, holding two plastic bags. When Lily came over, she gasped. "That's me." He smiled. "You stood your ground when the world was falling apart. That's bravery." She grinned, placing a small yellow heart above the painted sky. "Now it's complete." Emily watched from the doorway, tears glistening in her eyes. She had seen what money could do to people, how it often turned hearts cold. But here, she saw a man learning to feel again. That evening, as the kids packed up, Michael helped Emily carry the art supplies inside. "You've built something beautiful here," she said. He shrugged modestly. "It's theirs, not mine." She looked at him. "You're part of this now, whether you admit it or not." He chuckled softly, setting down the brushes. "You sound like my conscience." She smiled. "Maybe someone needs to be." As dusk fell, a light drizzle began outside. Lily ran to the window, laughing. "It's raining again." Emily laughed too, though her eyes flickered with worry. "No floods this time, thank God." Michael stepped beside her, watching the raindrops gather on the glass. "Funny," he murmured. "Rain used to remind me of everything I lost. Now it reminds me of what I found." Emily turned toward him, her voice soft. "You found hope." He met her eyes, the faintest smile touching his lips. "Maybe I did." For the first time in years, he didn't feel like the billionaire who'd lost everything. He felt like a man who'd finally learned what enough meant. Lily ran up between them, tugging their hands. "Come outside. The rain's soft. Dad said that means angels are crying happy tears." Emily looked at Michael, laughing gently. "You coming?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, let's make the angels jealous." They stepped outside into the drizzle, not a storm this time, but a quiet baptism. The sky glowed faintly pink, and the rain shimmered in the golden streetlight. Lily twirled barefoot in the puddles, giggling, while Michael and Emily watched. At that moment, he realized something profound. Not every rescue happens in a flood. Some happen in silence, in kindness, in second chances. If this story reminded you that kindness still exists, drop a red heart hash and comment "Hope lives on." Maybe someone who's losing faith needs to read your words tonight. Weeks turned into months, and the city slowly found its rhythm again. The scars of the flood faded beneath coats of new paint, and life, as it always does, carried on, but some hearts were forever changed. Michael had returned to his office downtown, though things felt different now. The polished marble floors, the hum of elevators, the endless chatter of profit and loss, it all seemed smaller somehow. He no longer felt the same rush in power or the hunger for applause. Instead, his mind often drifted to a small neighborhood, a girl with paint on her cheeks, and a woman whose quiet strength had rebuilt him piece by piece. Every Friday, without fail, he visited. Not as the billionaire everyone bowed to, but as a friend who helped clean brushes, fix easels, and share sandwiches. The art corner had now grown into something beautiful, a full community project supported by his foundation, though his name never appeared on a single banner. It didn't need to. His reward was the laughter he heard when he walked through those gates. One late afternoon, as the orange sun stretched long shadows over the small park, Lily ran up holding something carefully in her hands. "Michael! Look what I made today." She showed him a new painting, a big blue sky, a house on a hill, and 3 people holding hands. One had brown hair like Emily, one had a small braid, and one, unmistakably, looked like him. He smiled softly, his throat tight. "That's beautiful, Lily." She grinned. "It's our family picture." He blinked, struggling to speak. "Your family?" She nodded, utterly serious. "Mom says families aren't always who you're born to. They're who stay when the rain comes." He looked over at Emily, who stood a few feet away, watching quietly. Their eyes met, and for a moment, nothing else existed, just 2 people who'd found healing in each other's presence. Later that evening, as the children went home and the air grew cool, Michael walked Emily to her door. She stopped before entering, turning to him. "You've done more than you know," she said softly. He shook his head. "You're giving me too much credit." "No," she said gently. "You gave me faith again, in people, in kindness, in tomorrow." He looked down, his voice low. "You gave me something too, Emily." She smiled. "What's that?" He hesitated. "A reason to believe I can still be someone my daughter would have been proud of." Her eyes softened. "She would be proud, Michael. I think she's been watching this whole time." He exhaled shakily, a tear slipping free before he could stop it. You really think so? She nodded. Some angels send storms not to drown us, but to wash away what we shouldn't carry anymore. He smiled faintly, wiping his cheek. Then I guess I owe the storm a thank you. Emily chuckled softly. We both do. They stood there for a moment, letting the quiet night wrap around them. Then Lily's voice called from inside. Mom! Michael! Come see! I made hot chocolate. Emily laughed, shaking her head. That's our cue. He smiled. Wouldn't miss it for the world. As they walked inside, Michael glanced at the small framed photo on the wall, Lily's family picture, now hung proudly near the door. He felt something ease in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years, peace. The world outside was still messy, unpredictable, imperfect, but for the first time, he understood that maybe perfection wasn't the point. Maybe it was love, resilience, and the courage to keep promises even when it hurt. He looked out the window, where the moon's reflection shimmered on a quiet puddle, the last trace of the flood that had changed everything. And in that reflection, he almost thought he saw two little girls smiling, one with paint-stained hands, and one with a birthday balloon, side by side. He closed his eyes and whispered, I kept my promise, sweetheart. And somewhere deep within him, the silence finally broke into peace. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, I felt you.